Hello. Hey. So, welcome to Livecast episode number 2 of Pwnery's Reloading Bench. Today, we're going to be reloading 44 Magnum, Tony York's favorite caliber, apparently. Give me just a second. I'm still sort of getting settled in here. Let me get the chat box up over here. And that way, if you have any questions over at YouTube or gun channels, just type it in the boxes. If I see it, I'll try to answer it. If you are watching this on YouTube or anywhere else this may get streamed later, I invite you to come join gunchannels.com. It's free to join, free to register, free to be part of the conversation. We are always looking for people to host shows. So we would like to have a community where we can have shows basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You might see I actually host Good Morning Gun Channels on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. It's usually a long format show that runs up until about 4:30, between the hours of, say, 10 a.m. to 4:30 Central Time. Jimmy James hosts the Early Watch, and that's on from Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, usually between the hours about 9 to 5 Central Time. So every time we have openings in the afternoons, anybody who wants to come and join, we have new users. For instance, Clovertac, he's a new member of Gun Channels. He hosts 3 shows a day, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Basically, if there's a slot and you want to take it, come on in. Let us know that you're hosting a show. We can add you to the schedule, and then people like me or Jimmy will actually advertise it for you. We'll tell you during the long format shows what's on Gun Channels tonight, and you too could be a host and do stuff just like this. Give me just a second. Let me get the chat boxes up over on my other screen, and we'll begin. Watch page. Okay, so John's going to be watching over from YouTube. And then I've got the other chat over at Gun Channels, as soon as I can get the browser window up. That should work. All right. Let's see. YouTube, Gun Channels. We're good. All right. So if you have any questions, general reloading, 44 Magnum reloading, you can ask away right now while I'm getting this set up. Basically, I've got pretty much everything you need ready to go right here. So you need your projectiles. We're doing 2 different loadings today because I've got 2 different boxes I want to fill. So the first recipe is going to call for 250 grain full wad cutters. They look like this. That's actually the front. That's the back there. I'll be loading 33 of these just to empty this box. If you're wondering where I get these, that's bullets.com. This guy is out in Arkansas. He'll make pretty much anything you can dream up if you email him and ask him. Anything that's on his recipe of bullets he already offers goes from, I think, 38 all the way up to 500 Magnum. He makes these, one of my pet loads. I actually asked him to make a certain hardness for them, but yeah, he'll go all the way up to this. This is a 535 grain, 500 Magnum semi-wad cutter. They call it the Ranger Rick style bullet. The next size up is the 700 grain T-Rex thumper, which I've got on the way. And yes, these are gas checked, but they're pretty high quality stuff. If you need them harder or softer for your application, he can do that as long as you let him know ahead of time. So we'll be doing 33 of these. And we'll be doing 50 of the berries bullets, 44 Magnum full-plated flat nose, 240 grain. Sorry, my fingers are in the way, but you get the idea. And these I'll actually be reloading in Freedom Munitions 44 Magnum brass. I know it's not that big of a deal, but I think it's really cool that they actually put their name on the head stamp. I'll be doing 50 of those. Both loadings require the exact same powder charge, so that's going to be nice and easy. We'll set it up one time and forget it. Overall links will be slightly different. We'll go through that process as we go. But you'll need your brass, obviously. You'll need your projectiles. We'll do these first since they're on top. Shell plate holder, which is kind of nice. You need your die set. I'll be using a Lee 3-die set. They have 4-die sets. I think they're called the master set or something like that, where it has the bullet seating die and the crimp die separate. I don't need them. It's just an extra step. So we'll be using that. The thing I like about the Lee dies is they come with the shell holder. Very useful. Wish our CVS would do the same thing. And that just snaps in here. This is a number 11, by the way. It comes with it, so if you get the Lee set, it doesn't matter. Part number for the Lee set is 90512, in case you're looking for them. Today, you might have noticed different from last week. I'm actually going back to my starter kit. This is the Lee, what do they call this? The breech lock kit. This came with the perfect powder measure, scale, just about everything. It's a great starter kit. When I bought this originally, it was about $200 and something. Nowadays, you can get this for, I think, 150 bucks, which is great. Before, we used to tell people if you were going to get into reloading that it was either you buy a cheap gun or you buy the means of feeding your gun. So if you were on the fence about it and thinking about doing it, 150 bucks. You can't go wrong. I mean, that's not even High Point money, is it? So we're going to use this today. I've already cleaned it, oiled it. It's good to go. Beechwood handle's all nice and neat. And I'll get to show you how I actually prime by just squeezing this. Primers, we're going to be using CCI number 350, large pistol Magnum primers. And a couple of tools. I just got 2 spanners, like this, like this. This is to just lock the die in, and then usually this is to do fine adjustments for the, actually, no, I don't even think I need this one today. But just in case, I've got them here. My cases, I use MTMs for just about everything, so this is where we'll put them in when they're done. This is basically what the finished bullet will look like, the quad cutter kind, 250. These are being loaded in Starline brass. And then this is empty because I don't have any ready to go yet, but that's where we'll put the flat noses. Other than that, this is my powder drop. You can do it with the scoop and scale method. That's exactly how I started back in the day, because I was paranoid about getting the powder charges just right. I didn't trust this thing yet. But one day I decided to give it a go, and I discovered that this actually throws within a tenth plus or minus of a grain, which is perfectly fine with me. It works. It gets the job done. This is still a little gritty. I didn't know if this is something you can oil or not, so I may be struggling with this just a little bit today. But essentially what it is it's got this little metered hopper type deal, and you thread it in, and when you lift this, it fills the hopper, and then when you close it down, it just drops it down into your casings. So you got that. You're going to need a scale. I use a digital, like so. I think I paid 20 bucks for this thing. I've calibrated it multiple times against my beam scale. It's dead on. So this is just nice and quick and easy. It's digital. Obviously, you're going to need the bowl. This is a piece of stamped aluminum. Trick to this, as we covered before, in case you're new, then I'll go over again. Sometimes the powder will stick to these. Best way around it, take an old dryer sheet like this, just rub it on the inside, get it really good and charged up. Makes it kind of, I don't know, it gets the powder not to stick. So you just clean that out like so, put it on your scale, and when you get to that point in the process, you just zero it out with that on there, and that way we'll actually get the powder charges just the way we need it. Most importantly, last but not least, is a recipe. So I've got 2 recipes, and I'm going to use 2 recipe cards here, one for each. You're going to have to excuse me for a minute. I knew this was going to happen. I've got to get the door. All right. Sorry. It never fails, man. Plan on doing something and come to your door. Okay. So we're working with 2 different recipes. I got 2 different cheat sheets. Basically what I do is I go into my Lyman book and I find a recipe by the case length, the bullet size, the bullet weight, and it gives me the powder charge and the primers obviously you're going to need, plus overall length. The differences we're working with today are 1/1000th of an inch. So overall lengths are slightly shorter for the bigger bullet, strangely enough. So let's get started. I don't see any questions yet, so we'll get to that point eventually. Sure, somebody will have something to ask. Oh, left out something. All right, so the powder we're going to use today, unique. This is a disc powder, originally for shotguns, but it is infinitely useful in many loadings, most of which I use. I'm a bit of a lazy reloader, so I'll tend to try to get all my recipes to use a similar or same powder. I'm going to go ahead and just fill the hopper now so I don't have to do it later. And considering the weight we're doing, I shouldn't have to refill this. That should do. We'll open it up when we're actually ready to start. So that's that. All right, so we're working with cleaned, tumbled, resized D-prime brass already. I wet tumbled these. I think I don't have a video of the wet tumbling process yet. I'll get to that though. I actually have recorded it all. But first thing we're going to need to do is basically go step 2 in the dies because I've already resized and decapped. So this is our belling die. Put this aside. Try to keep the clutter down. One thing I like to do is combine processes. So what I'll do is I'll bell the cases and go ahead and prime the shells too. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and just load a casing in, run it up the die, start running the die down until it just starts to touch the case, like so. Back it off, quarter turn, start working the brass. Since we're doing these first, the hard cast, go ahead and just have one set aside. And then on occasion, just check to see if it fits yet, which we've got a long ways to go. Quarter turn, make your adjustments very slowly. Don't overdo it. You don't want to overbell the cases for two reasons. One, it'll fatigue your brass, which means you can't reload it nearly as often. You'll end up with a split right at the part where you bell at the end of the case. And once you do that, it's over. If it's a very, very light crack, you might be able to trim it back off. Otherwise, you're probably just going to have to trim it all the way down so you have a 44 special case. You can do that, but then you have to make sure that you only load it as a 44 special with your 44 specials. Or you can just, not overdo it. The other reason you don't want to overdo it is because if your case is belled out too much, the edges are going to grab against the crimping die as you feed it to crimp the bullet. And it's going to make that throw really gritty and really difficult. Again, you're going to fatigue your brass. You don't want to do that. So just make this adjustment nice and easy, slowly and carefully. You know you're getting close when it starts to fight you back on the upstroke, because that means the die is actually getting into the brass. Got a ways to go. All right, so this is where I want to be. I'll show you in a minute. You run this up here. I'm going to go ahead and lock this down. Big wrench. Don't over tighten it, just kind of snug it up a little bit. All right, so what you want it to do, like last time, you're going to see a lot of stuff that you probably saw in the last video. You just want the bullet to just drop into the case, just like this. Notice I'm not even at the lube groove yet. You just want it to fit in there, because once you seat the bullet, it'll do the rest for you. It's not going to bell it out. As long as you got everything lined up perfectly straight, you feed that in there and it'll crimp. It'll be fine. So you just want it to touch like this. So while we're in that step, I'm going to go ahead and fill this priming arm here at the base of the press. Sorry, addle-brained. And then usually what I do so I don't overdo this is I just grab it right here at the end of the press here and then squeeze it with the palm of my hand, and you'll feel it seat just like that. There's nothing to it. You don't want to overdo anything. Like, you don't want to throw it too tight. You don't want to crush things down or anything like that. You don't have to. So usually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and feed the next primer in. I'll bell the case first. Prime the case like so. Make sure that it's seated just slightly below the head stamp. And then go on to the next one. So we'll be doing this for the next, I'll go ahead and do all of them. So we're going to do this 80 more times. Usually during this process in my YouTube videos, non-streamed, this is where I'll cut, do a break, and say, we'll come back, for the next step. But since I've got you all live, this is a good time for you to ask questions or start a discussion on what you might think is a more efficient process, or if you want to talk about like your preferences in brass or primers. I'm not what you would call brand loyal for most things, but I do like Starline brass. They tend to make the webbing by the head stamp much more robust than, say, like Cellier and Belleau or Hornady or Winchester. They're really, really well made. And then when it comes to primers, I usually just stick with the CCI ones, mainly because it's the ones I can get in my area. But I had an issue with some of the Winchester primers that I've used in the past. These are a pretty hard shell primer, though. They're pretty stout. But I mean, I can get them in my area. I've always wanted to try like the Tula primers. Fortune Cookie 45LC actually uses those, but I don't have them in my area. Like, I usually don't bother ordering them. Generally, by the time you're done with hazmat fees and shipping, it's less than $1 difference for 1,000 than if I just go to my local. And I've built up a repertoire with my local anyway, so they hook me up when I either buy in bulk or I need a deal, or if they, bought more than they needed to carry that week or whatever. One thing that you might want to do if you're either new to reloading or just up and coming is get very familiar with the shop that you buy your supplies through. The reason I say that is because this happens frequently. There are powder shortages in your area, or your shop can't get it from a certain distributor at a certain time. And what's really frustrating is if you fire a unique caliber or something that uses a powder that you don't need in any other caliber and you can't find it, you're sort of up shit creek. So what I generally did was, we have a place out here in Texas or in my Houston area called Carter's Country. And I went there several times, got really familiar with the people who run the place, kind of let them know, what I do, what I'm looking for. And they got to the point where they said, well, give us a list and we'll give you a call if we ever get it. At first, that's all they did for me. Later on, they actually turned around and they said, okay, here's the deal. Which that should, if you're DB or you're Mr. Knives, you know exactly what that means. So here's the deal. That's what they told me. They said, so here's the deal. Our powder and reloading supply deliveries come every Tuesday and Thursday. And now I know exactly what day to go over there or send someone from my shop over there with a list. And then they go and they find out. And then they tell me, yeah, they've got this or they've got that. They've got 4 pounds or 8 pounds or whatever. So I would definitely recommend, if you go to your reloader supplies, become familiar and friendly with the guys who work there. Eventually, they'll start letting you know what you need or when you need it or when they get it, so you can time your purchases accordingly. You don't show up on a Wednesday after everything's sold out, because Tuesdays and Thursdays when I go to my reloader supply, it's full of people. Like, a lot of people will be there looking for stuff because they know that's the days it's there. But they don't tell everybody. They only tell their regulars, people that go there all the time, people who spend money with them. So you definitely want to do that. So anyway, yeah, this is a bit of a slow process. People talk about, why don't you get a progressive press or whatever? But the fact of the matter is when I reload, I'm not in a hurry anyway. And I honestly don't shoot in the volume that would necessitate doing like 2,000 or 3,000 at a time. Generally, I try to load about 1,000 of each caliber that I own. And that way I've got 10 boxes.
Did you feed Arthur at 4 o'clock?
Damn it. Hang on.
Did you feed Arthur at 4 o'clock?
I fed him.
Okay.
I tried to call you guys. Mom didn't turn on her phone.
Okay, I asked, did you feed my son? Just your mother now.
Sorry. Yeah. I fed him.
Okay, so I need all the listen.
3:45-ish.
What's the point of telling people you're broadcasting? Anyway, lost my train of thought now. Great. Anyway, I don't reload in the volumes necessary to do a progressive. Not really. I do want one. It's just, I think 10 boxes of every caliber I carry, many of which I wouldn't use in most instances anyway. Like 1,000 rounds of 500 Magnum is already overkill for most people. My limit so far when it comes to fatigue after shooting large caliber guns. So far, I think my limit is 74 rounds of 500 Magnum, and I use those 535, so you can get an idea. It's like hitting your hand with a bat. But anyway, 74 rounds is my limit. I took 100, but like, you know how it is. You go to the range, you bring something no one else has or something that they don't see very often, and everybody wants to have a go. I don't mind that. I actually like that. When I go to the range, I like bringing something that nobody else has because I let them shoot what I bring, and in turn, I get to shoot a lot of guns that I never had any intention of owning or buying. Or I get to try something that I never thought about owning or buying, and then I get to formulate an opinion on it without having to pay a rental fee or having to buy it and then discovering I didn't like it. Buyer's remorse sucks. If you notice, I'm dropping these primers onto my table, probably 20 at a time. I don't want to dump them all. Every time I work the handle, the whole bench just shakes just a little bit, and sometimes they move around. So I'd rather only drop like 10 or 20 at a time than all of them. But anyway, yeah, this is a long process when it comes to these. But I don't mind. Generally what I'll do is after a range session, the day of the range session, when I get home, I'll go ahead and clean the guns. Sometimes I won't even do that the first day, but usually, god damn it, usually what I'll do is I'll clean the guns. And then I'll wet tumble the brass. I'll decap and resize and wet tumble the brass. If you're wondering what I'm doing, this is I've got it mounted to a Lee bench plate kit. And unfortunately, I broke my own rule and I did one of the screws Gorilla Tight and I stripped it. So I've only got 3 screws holding this on. And every once in a while, the press will work itself loose. So I'll be replacing this with a new bench plate very soon. But they work really well. I recommend these to a lot of people, especially if you don't want to drill too many holes in your press. That's the other reason why I kept the screwdriver nearby too. You might see me get a little hot too. When I get to the powder part, I usually cover that, but you don't want a ceiling fan on when you're using a digital scale. The air pressure change is actually enough to throw off the calibration of the scale by sometimes as much as 0.4 of a grain, which doesn't sound like much, but in some rifle loadings, that's quite a bit. So, or even in like smaller loadings, for instance, like a 38 special, you don't want to overcharge it. All right. So this doesn't go in this bench plate because this is part of 51 rounds. Is it? No. Yeah, this will be part of 51 rounds of the full metal jackets that I'm going to load. So this is the first time I've reloaded the Freedom Munitions brass. I bought it on a whim. I was at a gun show and I saw it. And usually I try to make a habit of buying a box of Freedom every time I'm out there because they are a local to me. We have a Freedom Munitions retail center here in Houston, in Northwest Houston. If you didn't know, it's off of 290 and Jones Road, about a half a block north of that intersection. So now you know. You can do local pickups. It's great. But they also do go to the gun shows, and I saw it there. And generally, I can get a box of 44 Magnum of Freedom for less than $30, which is great for a factory loaded ammo. And this was new. This wasn't reman. And it was just an extra bonus when I found out that they were actually putting the head stamp on their own brass now. So I thought, oh, that's really cool. So hopefully it's good brass. The 50 rounds that I did get from them, I took to the range and shot, and it was really good, actually. The powder charges were obviously dead on consistent. Every shot felt exactly the same. The groupings were perfect on it, too. I think usually with my 44 at the indoor ranges, I'll only shoot out to about 15 yards. I can reach out to 25, but usually when I do grouping, I'll do it out to about 15 yards or 45 feet. And I think the 10 ring on the target I was using was only about a 2x3, and it was just a ragged hole. So it's decent stuff. Usually at about 10 yards, I can draw a smiley face with my own hand loads. But with this stuff here, you know, it's the first box I had, so I just did a group on its silhouette instead. I think it was like a 2x3 silhouette, or a 2x3 10 ring on that particular silhouette. I am doing gun review videos, and I've been trying to get range footage, but I just never have time to go to the range. Or when I do go, it's either full of people, so I can't film, or if I go with my friends, then it's just trying to get a hold of them to put it all together, which is damn near impossible. I think what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time, is I'm going to do 30 and 30. And then I'll just do the other ones off camera, you know, just to give you an idea what's going on. This wasn't supposed to be like you sit here and watch me do this for, you know, 2 hours or whatever. But I'll probably just do, yeah, I'll do the 33. What's this? I'll do the 33 wad cutters, and I'll probably do like 30 of the full metal jackets. This is the longest part of the whole process. Once you get the bullet seating and crimp set, it's quick. It's just, when I do reloading, like I was saying, I do the gun cleaning the day of most of the time, and I'll do the decap, resize, and wet tumble generally on the same day. And then the next day, I'll go ahead and finish the loading. Because, you know, usually after a range session, I do quite a bit of shooting. So there's a lot of brass to process. But I never have to sit there and do it all in one day. I'll usually do it, I'll span it across 2 days. Or like I'll take my time for the week and I'll just do, you know, 1 or 2 processes a night. Because, you know, house, dogs, family, kids, all that, you got to make the time for that first. Like this always has to take a back seat to it. All right, so we're going to do, what was it, 8 more? 18 more. Yeah, 18 more. And then we'll go on to the next step. But yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot to this. Like if you're a first-time shooter or a on-the-fence reloader, I mean, this should show you that there's nothing intimidating about this. There's really nothing to it. It's basically like a recipe, you know, or putting something together from IKEA. You follow the steps, and you know the key of consistent ammo and consistent reloads is be consistent in your process. But I mean, other than that, there's no magic or trickery involved. You know, as long as you follow the recipes in the books or the guides that you use, you really don't have a whole lot to worry about. You know, the squib loads and overcharges, that's just because you weren't cognizant of the process. You weren't paying attention to your powder loads, or your powder drop might have lost calibration or something like that. But, you know, once you get it down, once you get good at it, there's no real magic to it. It just becomes a process, like changing your oil or doing the brakes on your car. A little less messy. Generally, when I work with hard cast bullets, I do it barehanded, but I keep telling myself this. Invest in like a box of nitrile gloves. You don't really want to mess with lead in general. You don't want to get absorbed in your skin or in your bloodstream or whatever, but I forgot to buy some. Full metal jacket's obviously not even an issue. Okay, 5 to go. Right? 10, 20, 5. Yeah, 4 to go. I'll do the rest later. Also, just so you're aware, tonight on Gun Channels, I don't think there is a Saturday night show. So, like I was saying earlier at the beginning of the chat, if you would like to join Gun Channels and start your own chats, Saturday nights are open. We will have a live lobby chat, which is done through Google Hangouts and broadcasted on both YouTube and Gun Channels. And I believe Mr. Knives will be hosting that. He's from the West Coast, so he should be able to run it much longer than, say, like me at Central Time or somebody East Coast. And he does participate in his own chats. So I'll do these later here, just for the sake of time. Go ahead and get this back off. We'll go on to the next step of the process. Now we're going to do, both recipes just so you can see how the differences are or whatever. There's really not a whole lot to it. So go ahead and get my seating and crimping die up here. And we will fire up the scale. All right, so here's my scale, just so you know, because I know it doesn't come down at an angle. I'm working on that. I'm going to actually build like a gantry that goes over the top. It'll come down so you can see that. I don't know if this is too bright for you guys either. Is that better? Maybe it's a little too shiny. All right, so when you turn your scale, make sure your measuring bowl is on it if you have a digital, and make sure that it's set to grains, zero it out with the bowl on. And then what you want to do, go ahead and just open your hopper, start feeding powder into the meter. And we'll just see where we're at with the last setting that I had, because each powder meter is different. This is a disc powder. The AA9 from the last video was much thinner, so let's just see what it throws for the first time. Give it a little wiggle to get the powder to center in the middle. And we're a bit over. The number I'm looking for today for both loadings is 11 grains. And I know that doesn't sound like a whole lot, especially for you rifle reloaders, but unique is a low volume, high energy, slow burning powder. So a little bit, well, it's not like Tight Group. Tight Group's mantra is a little bit goes a long way. That same principle applies kind of to unique too. So the number we're looking for is 11. So I'm going to unlock the meter. I'm going to go ahead and turn this in a bit. Lock it down. We'll run it again. One thing you may notice is I give the armature a tap on the way up and on the way down, just to make sure I get everything in and out of the hopper. Like I said, if you want consistent reloads, be consistent. 12. 1 grain doesn't sound like a lot either, but with one grain of unique is actually quite a lot in terms of like velocity and energy and powder or power. $11.3. A little bit of a turn here. Because it does ±1, I want this last adjustment to be very slight, because that could have been a +1 for all I know. Nope. Turn this a little bit more. I've got this on an old monitor stand, so it acts like a bit like a lazy Susan for about 40 degrees either way, which is pretty convenient. Still at 11.3. Okay. And then I overshot it, so now we're at 10.7. All right, so basically I need to split the difference, and then we'll get to actually charging the cases. $11 on the dot. Perfect. Generally what I'll do is I'll go ahead and check that at least 2 or 3 times just to make sure it's throwing within that range of plus or minus 1. 11 on the dot. All right, so we're pretty good. Unique generally measures almost right on every time. This perfect pattern measure can take it pretty much exact every time. So with that, we're already done with the scale part, so I can go ahead and put that away. Try to keep as little or as few things as possible on my bench, just because this is very small. If you look at my video, you'll actually see my very first video in the reloading section of my channel will say how to reload in tight spaces. But it covers all of that, including the part numbers for this bench if you have a tight space of your own that you have to work through. All right, so the next thing I need is my caliper, digital dial caliper. I got this at Harbor Freight. It's just about the same as everyone else's digital dial caliper. I think it's probably made by one company. Everyone just stamps their name on it. Set it to inches. Zero it out. And now begins the seating process. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to load a case with powder, do a visual inspection, make sure I know what it looks like, and try to memorize what it's going to look like in here. Drop the bullet in, contain it, and then we're going to get ready to seat the bullet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run this down just slightly and lock it down. This is probably going to sound familiar to most of you guys. Matter of fact, I can turn this down all the way down until it touches, back it off, and then lock it down. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to avoid making or crimping the bullet. Go ahead and screw that down. And then we'll start working down the seating stem. You'll feel it start to touch. And just start watching it here. Obviously I have to pass the lube groove, so I'm not even worried about that part yet. Okay. So there is a crimping groove on this, and it's probably close to my overall length that I want. The number I'm looking for with the 250 is 1.635 total length. I'm at 1.690. So we'll go ahead and make slight adjustments. What I've done with these dies, I guess I should have showed you this in the first place, but I've taken a Sharpie and I've marked the top of the seating stem up here with a line and the lock ring with a line. So I can actually measure quarter turns that I'm making for adjustments because they don't have marks on these with Lee. So I can already tell. I'm going to do that half a turn. We're still not near the crimp groove yet, but we're getting there. Now I'm at 1660. I'll do another almost half a turn. $1,637. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll tell you why here in a second. It is at the base of the crimp groove. Now I want to back this all the way off so it doesn't touch. I want to unlock the lock ring. I'll run this back up until it touches. Yep. Okay, it's just starting to touch here. Back it off, quarter turn. Try to crimp. You can visually see it go in. Quarter turn, crimp. You can feel it as it starts to grab. The handle will get tight right at the very end of the throw also. Just a little bit more. Okay, that is where I'm going to want it. It was already crimping in before I made that last adjustment. I added just a hair more, so it was really good and tight. And I'm going to leave it up there so when I turn this, it keeps that setting for the crimp here. Grab your wrench, lock it down. Got Jimmy James over there at the YouTube side. Glad you can join us. All right, so the crimp setting is locked in. Now I just need to lower the stem back down until it just touches the bullet, which it just stopped right there. Back it off. Remeasure the already crimped bullet. See, now this is exactly why I stopped short, because now I'm actually just a hair under my overall length. Now I'm at 1.629. I'm just a hair under. What happens is, if you look at the way this bullet is crimped, the edges are rolled in right there. That's a good tight crimp, which means it won't jump out. But the side effect of that is when you roll crimp into the projectile, it will pull the bullet back down in there. So sometimes you undershoot your overall length. Now, generally, this doesn't bother me because I still have a crimp groove there and I can still see the upper half of it. So my overall length is very, very close to my recipe, but just looking at it here visually, we're perfectly fine. So that's good to go. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll shake the brass and listen for the powder to shake in there just to make sure I got it in there. And we're done with that one. And then you just wash, rinse, and repeat. So I can go ahead and open up my box of bullets. Feed this in here like so. Grab another one. Drop it in. Now when I run this, slowly, it'll push the bullet down, seat it all the way where I need it, and then that last little bump crimps it. Now when I back off, perfect bullet. Perfect roll crimp, repeat process over and over and over until you're done. Look at that thing. It's blunt fist, right? This thing punches perfect holes in targets. And, well, paper or other. I've actually shot hogs with these before too. They don't like it. My dad's old-fashioned, so his idea of self-defense rounds before the modern hollow point was he preferred wad cutters. So for his 38 special, I load him wad cutters. There you go, another perfect round. Once you get it locked in like this, you don't have to babysit it anymore. Every once in a while, I'll just check it to make sure that I lock the dies down properly. But since I use the wrench, I'm pretty sure it's exactly the way I need it. The perfect powder measure here obviously can never double charge if you only do one throw up, one throw down. So you're good there too. The other thing you want to be mindful of when you're making these, always do a visual inspection. Just make sure that the crimp still looks consistent and everything. If you want, you can go ahead and whip out your caliper and just measure it to make sure that your settings are always the same. It sucked it in just a hair, but I mean, like I'm literally like 5 thousandths off. It's nothing. So we're good with this loading. We'll go ahead and finish up these. Like I said, I was only doing 33 of these, so this should go pretty quickly. If any of you have a Lee Perfect powder measure like I've got here, let me know if this joint is oilable, because it is a little sticky, and then, this is my first one, so if you can oil that joint without, affecting anything, then that's probably what I need to do. Go ahead and get this out the way. So Jimmy, since you're out there, did you get to see what I sent you already, right? Like, I know you said they got to your house yesterday. Did you actually get to grab a hold of them and check them out? Maybe even shoot them? After this video here, if I do another one of these, Not really sure what caliber I'm going to do because I'm out of empty brass. Till I go shooting. I think I've got 45 Colts. I might be able to do that. Okay, he saw them. I mean, once I get my powder drop dialed in like this, I could turn the fan back on. It's getting warm in here. August in Texas with no fan. Who would have thought it got hot, right? Another thing that I'm trying to do these days is if I take a box of ammo, try to empty that box at the range, because every once in a while I'll change projectiles or I'll change powder, and I don't want to have one box with 3 different loadings and then only have, 5 bullets left over in the box. So the reason I did 33 today was because that's how many I had left. I just wanted to empty it out so I could throw them away, the boxes, that is. I'm trying to carry and shoot in even numbers for reloading. So generally 50, 100, stuff like that. These Matt's bullets you can usually buy in boxes of, what is it, 50, 100, 250, 500, 1,000, and then he'll do multiples of thousands. Obviously, the more you buy, the more you'll save. But, when finances are permitting, I just load up on several calibers, a couple of boxes here and there of each. Those Ranger Ricks are really nice, but I shoot them so infrequently that I don't buy them that often, which is why I was really hesitant to buy the 700 grain ones. That comes in a box of 50, and it's like $33. They're expensive because they're a, what would I call it? A boutique bullet. Obviously not a self-defense round for 2-legged creatures. Not saying you couldn't, but how you can explain that in court? Well, I was gonna go hunting, but I took my range gun, and this dude tried to carjack me, and the range gun just happened to have 700 grain bullets. It was the only gun that I brought that day, and this guy had a 9, and he forced me to shoot him. But you took his leg off. It was just one shot, dude. When you first saw the green one, you thought it had rat shot in it. Had to do a double take. Those were AccuTips? Hang on a sec, Jimmy. Are you talking about these? The reason I didn't send you these, number one, is because I only have, I got 6 left. But the thing is I haven't shot the loading that I put those in yet, and I didn't want to send them to you and have something bad happen. So those bullets are so long. Those were for 454s, by the way, if in case you're wondering. The overall length of that projectile is so long as a 260 grain bullet that it had to be seated much deeper than even those 350s? 300s. Yeah. They get inset to the brass more than the 300 grains, even though they're 40 grain lighter projectiles, because of that tip making it longer. And it makes it a compressed powder charge. So I backed off the powder charge compared to the 300 grain, knowing that was going to happen, but it compressed it anyway. So I wasn't sure how much pressure that is. I didn't want to have you stick it in your Taurus and have it blow up. So when I get a chance, I'll run it in my Alaskan and see how it feels and behaves. And if I'm comfortable with it, then if I load you another set, you can have like the last 5 out of 6 of those, since you have a 5-round cylinder, and you can try them then. Don't worry, guys. When I got 10 more of these, then we'll go on to the next one. Yeah, I made the AccuTips, but I haven't had a chance to shoot them yet since I made a hunting load with them, and they were very, very soft. Oh, you're talking about the powder-coated green ones. Okay. When you said green, I thought you were talking about the AccuTips. No, those are two-tone powder coat. So that's a black base with a green speckle on it or whatever. Those are just those are 230 grain round nose, but they have 1 grain higher powder charge than the 300s. So they may actually kick harder than the blue pill. The 5 jacketed ones, obviously, or the 5 hollow points are blue pills. I loaded those. Actually, I loaded them a little higher than the original blue pill. And then I went a grain higher than that for the lighter bullet. So they should scream out of the barrel. I'll definitely be buying these wad cutters again. These were great bullets. Like this was the first box I ever had of this style for 44 for Matt's bullets, and bought 200 of them. And this was the last box of I think 100 that I had. Yeah, that was the last box of 100. One other thing that I keep forgetting to say. That over there. When you seat your bullets, one thing that you may or may not need to be cognizant of is when you place the bullet into the casing, like so. Try to get it in as square as possible, okay? Especially with something like a wad cutter like this, because, let me grab another one, I'll show you what I mean. It's just blunt, 90 degrees, right? And if you put that in at an odd angle, and then you try to press that down into your bullet, this sharp outer edge, when it's canted like this, is going to try to dig out the brass, and it'll misshape it as you run it up the die. That whole brass fatigue thing, you want to try to limit that as much as possible. So you want this in as straight as possible up into the die, because not only will it prevent that from happening, but if it's perfectly smooth and perpendicular or parallel with the casing, it goes in and crimps real easy too. You want to make this as easy as possible, especially on a single stage press, because this is a monotonous process. You just go over and over and over. Your shoulder will start to hurt if you do this for a long time, especially on larger calibers. Like when I do Rainier bullets that have no give when you crimp them, my arm gets tired. I have to push down pretty hard. And I'm pretty sure I'm fatiguing the brass doing it. So when I run out of these Rainiers, I probably won't buy them ever again. Not for pistol rounds. Rifle rounds, like if I loaded them in 50 Bayo like I used to, here, I'll show you those two. Then the crimp is not as important. You just seat it and you're done. I try to put a light crimp on even the rifle bullets. Just it's my paranoia because I'm so used to just pistol rounds anyway. Now, this is a really heavy box, so you're going to have to stand by. $139 I paid for this box. So these are the kind of conical on the inside. These are 350 grain truncated nose Rainier 500 Magnum or 50 Beowulf bullets. But Rainier bullets are so stiff. They have no give. When you try to clip them, they have zero give. So it's hard on the press, it's hard on your hands. You can actually hydraulically crush your cases if you try too hard to crush on them, especially if they dig in. So you want to be careful with those. There's a company called Extreme Bullets. They make a jacketed or a plated bullet like that, but they actually went one extra step, and they crimped in a cantilever. So you're good there too. Four to go, then we'll go on to the next one. box. My bench is getting lighter because I keep using up all the supplies, which reminds me that I need to buy. Restock, I guess. All right, that's the last one of these. Now we get to go to the go, no-go section, which if you watched last week, you get to see a little bit of gun porn. I have not done a video on this gun yet. So you can buy go, no-go gauges, or you can just drop them into the gun you're going to shoot them out of and see if they fit. That's what I usually do. So this is my go, no-go, no gauge. This is a Performance Center Smith & Wesson 629 competitor. You might have recognized this from G.I. Joe. It was in Fast and Furious 6 too. The Rock carries this, but his had an unfluted cylinder, which I have on order. Has a fully weighted barrel. That's what that underside thing here is. Has 6 weights in here. Comes with all 6 steel weights, but it also comes with 6 polymer filler imitation weights if you don't want to use them. I like my guns heavy, so they're all in there. Another modification that I actually did was this is not the original grip to the gun. The original end frame grip actually is cut off back here and it has most of the backstrap exposed. Problem with that is I like to shoot this a lot. So when I hold it, I don't like the backstrap slamming into the back of my knuckles over here, fatiguing my hand. So this grip, just in case if you guys were ever wondering, is from a Smith & Wesson X frame, which is for the 460 Magnum or the 500 Magnum. And as you can see, it's a perfect fit. No gap, no nothing. Because this part of the frame is identical on an N frame, an X frame, and even some L frames. So, open the cylinder. You can see empty, right? And just take one of my loadings, just drop it in there. What you want it to do is just fall in, no tension. You don't want it to hang up on the way down. Like so. Drops right in, then check the cylinder, make sure it doesn't stick out the back. Look at that, it's like all full in here. Isn't that cool looking? That's what I like about wad cutters. But we're good. Like I actually had a little bit of room to play with. And then just eject them out. So seeing as all of these were made exactly the same, they're going to behave the same. You want the cylinder, or sorry, you want the bullets to drop straight in like that. You don't want it to be any, you don't want it to be tight going in because that means you've got a bulge somewhere. If you sized this properly and you crimped it properly, it'll drop right in like that. And which means after you fire it, it'll drop right out too. It'll obturate to the cylinder walls, but it won't do it so much to lock it in place and keep it stuck in there. If you did, you probably overpressured the hell out of it. Usually you can tell that by checking your primer. If it looks pillowed out with a big, when your primer hits it and it pillows out around the strike, you probably overpressured it, which means you probably overloaded it, which can get dangerous. So that loading for the 250s are complete. Now we've got one other loading we're going to do, which is the 240 grain. These were the 250s, and now we're going to move on to the 240 grains. The only real difference here, powder load is the same, but the overall length is slightly different. So I need to back this off. This is the only real change I'm going to have to do. Back that off. Run the locking collar up. I don't want to crimp. Not that much. And then we'll just run this back down to keep it snug. Essentially, I don't want to crimp. I just want this backed all the way out, no crimp. Then we'll go ahead and grab the Freedom Brass. Run the same powder charge because both recipes called for 11 grains. And We'll whip out the berries bullets. Now these are just like the Rainiers, but these aren't plated nearly as thick, so they ought to take a crimp relatively well. Just run this all the way up. Not crimping. I can just get it in and out nice and easy. We'll just run the stem down. Now it's starting to touch. And then we got a long way to go, so I'm going to do about 2 full turns. We're going to do another 2 full turns. Okay. And then we'll whip out the caliper. And the magic number for this loading is 1645, 1.645 OAL. We'll go ahead and take this out, take a measurement. I didn't zero this out, did I? $1.644.5. Okay, we're good. I already got it on the first try. Go ahead and back this off. Loosen the lock ring. Run this back up, and we'll do the crimp next. It's already touching here. Back it off, quarter turn, crimp. Now this one doesn't visually look the same when you crimp it compared to the one with a groove in it. So I try to be careful when I do this. Good. All right. I'll keep this setting right. Woohoo! Told you that was going to happen eventually. All right. Definitely replacing this bench plate, by the way. That is a case of what not to do, by the way. Oh. Okay. All right. Fix that later. Anyway, you can see the crimp there. It did take ever so slightly. I had to pull pretty hard on it to do that. That's why it jumped out of the bench plate. But yeah, you definitely want this on tight, and I didn't do that. Plus, I'm missing one screw. Sucks. Make sure this is good and tight. That's the other thing about these plated bullets that I have a hard time with is you have to work the press really tight. Okay. Good. This is going to require a little bit of work. I'll fix that later. All right. So that's one. Ooh, missed a step. Go ahead and lock this setting down. Lock this setting down. And lock this back down. Now I can go back to this one. And this will repeat the process for me. Nice and easy. And then we'll repeat this several times as well. This has run a bit long, so what I'll probably do is I'll just go ahead and finish these off camera, but I'll load 6 just to show you in the go, no go. Good. These definitely have to be worked harder than the lead bullets for sure. If you have a cantilever built in, then it's not. But a little tighter. Actually, now that I think about it in hindsight, what I probably should have done is I probably should have switched presses for this job. When I do the plated bullets, one of the reasons I got the rock chucker in the first place was for torque, where this doesn't have enough in comparison to the rock chucker. The handle's thinner, the throw is longer. Whereas rock chucker, it's massive. You've probably seen it before in the last video. The handle's thick and it's got a shorter throw. It's built for torque. It's made for larger caliber bullets. But I started on this one, and I could do 44 Magnum on this one. It's just when it comes to these plated bullets that fight back a little bit, you could really use the extra torque. Don't hit it harder, use a bigger hammer, that whole theory. Anyway, I've got 7 of those in there. We'll do the go, no go. I've got 6 rounds, like so. Just make sure they drop right on in. If you got bulges and you forced it, just take a kinetic hammer, knock it out, do it right, start it over. But as you can see, all 6 in there, all nice and flush. No hang-ups, comes right out. Comes right out. See? And they drop right out if you don't fire them, obviously. So anyway, just to spare you guys the monotony of watching me do the other 23, I went over. I want to thank you all for coming today. And if you have any last minute questions, you can go ahead and ask them now. But otherwise, let me just remind you that this will be hosted on both YouTube and gun channels. If you were watching this on YouTube or anywhere else that this may be shared later externally, I invite you to come on down to gunchannels.com. It is free to join. It's free to register. It's free to be a member. You can join on panel discussions like this. So minus the snafu of the bench coming or the press coming loose, I'd say this actually went pretty well. Next time we do this, I don't know if I'll do it next Saturday just because I've got no stuff to reload other than some 45 Colts. But we'll probably do this again, if you like what you see or if you like what I do and you have any suggestions on what I should load, reload, or if you'd like me to load something for you the first time and then maybe send you the recipe for it, I can be commissioned for that. If it's a caliber that I already own and I've already got all the tooling for it, we're good to go. If it's a caliber that I don't have and you want to send me the die set for it, then yeah, I'll do it. I'll just give you my shop address and you can send it over to me. I'll do a video on it. You can see me load your bullets and then I'll send them back to you. We did that for Jimmy James twice now already. And we did his in 454 Casull. But currently I load 500, 454, 45 Colt, 44 Magnum, 44 Special, 357 Magnum, 38, 30-30 Winchester, 45-70 Government. What else? I think that's it right now, actually. Because I don't load 223, not yet, because it was cheap enough for me to buy at the time when I used it. I do load 50 Beowulf, but when I sold my rifle, I sold the die sets with that rifle because the guy I sold it to was a reloader. So I gave him like a package deal. But anyway, I think that's about going to wrap us up for today. If you haven't come by Gun Channels, please do. Why do I have to keep recalibrating my powder? It keeps underfilling cases. Is it busted? It depends on what powder drop you're using. Are you using one like this, where it has a metered dial? Then it shouldn't do that. If yours has the discs, you might want to check to see if that disc has some slop in it, or if it's collapsed when you screw it down and it doesn't throw consistently. But these are fairly accurate. They'll do you within a tenth plus or minus of a grain. If it's doing it wildly different, like 5, 8 tenths, things like that, there's something going on with the powder measure itself. Maybe if you have the disc style, I heard that's probably more common. This dial kind, it's weight, or it's measured by volume in here, and then you take that volume and then you check it on the scale. You have a Lee Auto disc, so I would check the discs first, because if you install them and you over tighten it or you crush it or whatever like that, or if there's any slop in there, then they probably don't throw consistently. The good news is I've known somebody with a Lee Auto disc with those things that had issues. He called Lee, they sent him a whole new set, no questions asked. So worst case scenario, give them a holler. They'll send you a new set of discs. You'd probably be fine. They stand behind their stuff, so you're probably good there. So if that's it, we will see you all later. If you're on Gun Channels, the lobby should be starting shortly if it hasn't already. If you are interested in starting a Saturday night show, please do. We'll add you to the schedule. We'll definitely advertise for you. We'll let you know what's going on. But thanks for tuning in. If you like what you saw, just like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll see you later. We'll see you for the next one. If there should be a next one, you'll be notified if you're a subscriber. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you later.